Opposition leader Penelope Beckles is looking forward to being the next political leader of the People's National Movement. Monday was nomination day for the PNM's upcoming internal elections, carded for June 22nd. Supporters and members of Parliament welcomed Mrs. Beckles to Valdezia House to file her nomination papers. It is the second time in 11 years that she is seeking to lead the People's National Movement. The opposition leader, who has been meeting constituents throughout Trinidad, said after having lost the election, the party has been told their failure to listen and meet and engage constituents was a major factor.
So it's not I'm not engaging. I mean, I have been to San Fernando East, San Fernando West, I've been to Point Fortin, I've been to Liberia, I've been to Maruga, I've been to Cuba North, I've met with several of the central constituencies. The Parliament has only met once. Today, I officially started in the lead of the opposition office. It has been handed over by the Parliament.
Government Minister Dr. Avery Brown is vying for vice chairman. Although he's been a member of the PNM for the past 30 years, it is the first time he's seeking a position on the party's executive.
I believe I've certainly listened to the voice of the people that have been calling for a different disposition from the People's National Movement. There's some things we've always been good at, and there's some things that we have to work at, and that really has been expressed by Ms. Beckles, and really has inspired me to step forward now.
The PNM subsequently advised that Ms. Beckles was nominated unopposed for the position of political leader. Former PNM Chairman Stuart Young, in a Facebook post on Monday, said upon reflection he decided that it is not in the best interest of the party for him to seek a post in the new executive.
Well, the crisis facing this country and the world tonight is the complete collapse of mental acuity in the President of the United States, the current president. This weekend, the President of the United States endorsed a social media post that says there is no Joe Biden, executed in 2020, Biden clones, doubles, and robotic engineered, soulless, mindless entities are what you see. Needless to say, Donald Trump is the only president in history who can publicly embrace and accept and believe such insanity without immediately provoking a rush of questions by the White House press corps and news organizations around the world about the sanity of the American president, which means that the insanity of the current American president is now officially taken for granted in the news media. No huge banners on the cable news network that recently devoted itself to the issue of presidential mental acuity. The overwhelming majority of the American news media has absolutely no problem now with Donald Trump saying there is no Joe Biden executed in 2020. Donald Trump didn't actually write those words himself, but he found those words in his poison social media feed, and he decided to fully endorse and embrace those words. The New York Times remains one of the news organizations that finds that kind of behavior in the president strange, though not worthy of big front page headlines. And so the New York Times ran a story titled, "Trump Amplifies Another Executed in 2020, Biden Clones, Doubles, and Robotic Engineered, Soulless, Mindless Entities are what you see." Needless to say, Donald Trump is the only president in history who can publicly embrace and accept and believe such insanity without immediately provoking a rush of questions by the White House press corps and news organizations around the world about the sanity of the American president, which means that the insanity of the current American president is now officially taken for granted in the news media. No huge banners on the cable news network that recently devoted itself to the issue of presidential mental acuity. The overwhelming majority of the American news media has absolutely no problem now with Donald Trump saying there is no Joe Biden executed in 2020. Donald Trump didn't actually write those words himself, but he found those words in his poison social media feed, and he decided to fully endorse and embrace those words. The New York Times remains one of the news organizations that finds that kind of behavior in a president strange, though not worthy of big front-page headlines. And so the New York Times ran a story titled, "Trump Amplifies Another Outlandish Conspiracy Theory, Biden is a Robotic Clone." And the country and the world tonight is the complete collapse of mental acuity in the President of the United States, the current president. This weekend, the President of the United States endorsed a social media post that says there is no Joe Biden, executed in 2020, Biden clones, doubles, and robotic engineered, soulless, mindless entities are what you see. Needless to say, Donald Trump is the only president in history who can publicly embrace and accept and believe such insanity without immediately provoking a rush of questions by the White House press corps and news organizations around the world about the sanity of the American president, which means that the insanity of the current American president is now officially taken for granted in the news media. No huge banners on the cable news network that recently devoted itself to the issue of presidential mental acuity. The overwhelming majority of the American news media has absolutely no problem now with Donald Trump saying there is no Joe Biden executed in 2020. Donald Trump didn't actually write those words himself, but he found those words in his poison social media feed, and he decided to fully endorse and embrace those words. The New York Times remains one of the news organizations that finds that kind of behavior in a president strange, though not worthy of big front-page headlines. And so the New York Times ran a story titled, "Trump Amplifies Another Outlandish Conspiracy Theory, Biden is a Robotic Clone." And here is the most important line in that story. The White House did not respond to requests for comment on the post about Mr. Biden. That, of course, would be impossible for any other White House if the president amplified, quote, another outlandish conspiracy theory. If any other president said that a previous living president is a robotic clone, that White House would not be able to simply refuse to comment. But that is how fully Donald Trump has crushed political reporting and political coverage in this country. And because he has crushed it, he can, in publicity terms anyway, get away with anything, and he knows it. Donald Trump is behaving like someone who believes he can get away with anything. If you want to rush to Donald Trump's defense, you are going to have to guess at a defense. You're going to have to make up a defense that Donald Trump himself has not offered. You have every right to believe, as a result of that single post alone, that Donald Trump is completely deranged and has no idea what day it is or what country he lives in. That is as defensible a reaction to Donald Trump's post as the notion that it's a joke. Neither one of those reactions can be proved, but what is undeniable by anyone anywhere, the still breathtaking stupidity of Donald Trump to find that post in the poisonous flow of his social media and decide that that's the one he wants to push that day. That is a man whose stupidity knows no bounds. That is the man whose stupidity never bumps into decency, which would then prevent him from doing the indecent, the stupid. In fact, Donald Trump can be counted on tomorrow to be stupidly indecent about something. And Joe Biden never appointed anyone to anything as incompetent and reckless and cruel as Elon Musk, who bid his farewell to his formal engagement of service with the Trump administration on Friday in the Oval Office, where his physical behavior gave many indications of possibly confirming the headline that emerged in the New York Times that very day. On the campaign trail, Elon Musk juggled drugs and family drama. We await an explanation of Elon Musk's physicality, including his inexplicable gazes at the ceiling and head twisting at the ceiling in the Oval Office. The Fox White House reporter, who appeared to be the master of ceremonies of the press corps in the Oval Office on Friday because he was allowed to ask many more questions than anyone else, seems to be on his way to ask about the New York Times breaking news about Elon Musk's drug use.
There is a New York Times report today that accuses you of blurring the line between...
Is the New York Times, is that the same publication?
Notice that the Fox reporter immediately stopped when Elon Musk ordered him to stop and wait. Elon Musk then went into a lying soliloquy about the New York Times, ending with a direct order to the Fox reporter to, quote, these were his words, "move on." And the Fox reporter did exactly what Rupert Murdoch is paying him to do in that situation. He moved on when ordered to move on by anyone in Trump world. That is the same Fox reporter who gleefully joined in the screaming at Joe Biden or his press secretary in the Biden White House. Every reporter working in the Biden White House knew they could scream at Joe Biden or scream at the White House press secretary and not be kicked out of the Biden White House permanently forever. And like children who know they won't get in trouble if they do it, they did it. They screamed at Joe Biden and his press secretary. And like children who know they will get in trouble if they do it, they don't dare do it now. Because Donald Trump has crushed all of that. And so Donald Trump and Elon Musk got away with another lying session without any serious challenge from a single White House reporter. Not one of whom asked Elon Musk how it felt to kill children. Not one of those White House reporters covering Elon Musk's farewell from government service asked him to reply to Bill Gates' description of Elon Musk as the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children. That is Elon Musk's singular achievement in government, because Elon Musk decided to destroy the United States Agency for International Development, the agency that was feeding more starving children in the world than any other agency. More starving children in the world depended on surplus food from the United States to survive. Food we do not need and cannot consume. Food we have overproduced in this country. And Elon Musk decided to take that food away from them and let them die. And that is not news to the White House press corps. No one is counting, because Elon Musk fired the people who were counting. Collecting statistics in advanced economies is relatively easy, with advanced methods relatively accurate, but in many parts of the world, the most impoverished parts of the world, statistics can be hard to come by. Not every baby gets a birth certificate. Not every baby gets a death certificate. The people who would be counting how many people Elon Musk killed by killing USAID were the very people who Elon Musk fired from USAID. So Elon Musk commits the greatest crime of the 21st century against the poverty population of the world and fires everyone who would be able to quantify for us the enormity of the crime. The New York Times reports, quote, Mr. Musk's drug consumption went well beyond occasional use. He told people he was taking so much ketamine, a powerful anesthetic, that it was affecting his bladder, a known effect of chronic use. He took ecstasy and psychedelic mushrooms. And he traveled with a daily medication box that held about 20 pills, including ones with the markings of the stimulant Adderall, according to a photo of the box, and people who have seen it. He had a whole box full of drugs that he could have been using when he was taking life-saving drugs away from children. The New York Times account is about the drugs Elon Musk was taking during the presidential campaign. NBC News has not independently confirmed the New York Times reporting. Elon Musk has not actually denied a single word of the New York Times reporting. The New York Times says, quote, we provided Musk with multiple opportunities to reply or rebut this reporting before publication, and he declined. The New York Times reporting suggests that Elon Musk took flight on a campaign stage with Donald Trump the first time he was up there because he was possibly on ketamine or ecstasy or Adderall or psychedelic mushrooms or all of the above at the same time. The Times obtained a text message before Elon Musk joined the Trump campaign, in which Elon Musk complained about the investigations of his businesses that the federal government was doing at the time. The Biden administration views me as the number 2 threat after Trump. I can't be president, but I can help Trump defeat Biden, and I will, he added. And the rest is tragic history. The richest person in the world poured money into a presidential campaign, more money than anyone else in the history of political contributions, and he did it to end the investigations that the federal government was aiming at his business activities. And of course, Donald Trump ended those investigations because you get what you pay for with Donald Trump, especially if you're the richest person in the world. The worldwide cruelty campaign launched by Elon Musk and Donald Trump now includes deporting people who have never committed a crime to countries where they have never lived and do not speak the language. Elon Musk seems to believe that cruelty is the antidote to empathy, which he considers a great human weakness. Elon Musk told the comedian Joe Rogan, quote, "The fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy." Abraham Lincoln did not know that. Abraham Lincoln believed he should govern with empathy. So did Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So did most presidents, some better than others. It was empathy coupled with geopolitical and public health wisdom that led President George W. Bush to create the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which saved 26 million lives in Africa alone before Elon Musk decided those lives were not worth saving.
Has anyone in the world died because of what Elon Musk did?
Listen,
Yes or no, reclaiming my time. If you won't answer, that's a loud answer.
no one has died because of USAID.
The people who have died
That's a
as a
lie.
result of cutting off the oxygen of a woman in Burma and denying HIV/AIDS treatment to those in Africa. They are dead now at the hands of Elon Musk and his co-conspirators.
This is why I'm introducing the Rubio Act. So you focus on the one job that the Senate gave you to serve as our Secretary of State because you are clearly distracted, okay? After the last few months, I understand why President Trump has such colorful nicknames for you. You're obedient, you're following the rules. You will do anything the president tells you to do without regard for the law, the Constitution, America's security, or standing as a leader in the world. Unlike you, I do not fear crossing Donald Trump. I refuse to give up on these children.
Marco Rubio did not tell the truth to the committee, and the proof that he was not telling the truth is that he has changed his story after that testimony. The Washington Post fact-checked Marco Rubio's testimony, saying, "There is no dispute that people have died because the Trump administration abruptly suspended foreign aid. One might quibble over whether tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands have died." In his testimony, Secretary of State Rubio tried to contradict reporting from Africa from the New York Times' Nicholas Kristof. Nicholas Kristof responded to Rubio's testimony, writing in the New York Times, "Let me help Rubio with the truth. Meet Evan Anzu, a 5-year-old boy who was born with HIV in South Sudan. I mentioned Evan in a column in March from South Sudan. This was a child as precious as yours or mine. Evan's life was in our hands, and for 5 years, America kept him alive with antiretroviral medicines costing less than 12 cents a day through the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR. This was a program started by President George W. Bush and has saved more than 26 million lives so far, and it turned the tide of AIDS around the world and built enormous goodwill toward the United States. Then along came President Trump and his freeze on most humanitarian aid in January. How could a 5-year-old orphan possibly obtain medicine on his own? Evan weakened and soon died of an opportunistic infection. Marco Rubio told the House committee, "No children are dying on my watch." Evan died on his watch. Evans of all ages are dying on Marco Rubio's watch, and no one is counting, and so we don't know as of tonight, whether it's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Evans, but we know it will be. In a New York Times column titled, quote, Elon Musk's legacy is disease, starvation, and death, Michelle Goldberg reports. Brooke Nichols, an associate professor of global health at Boston University, has estimated that these cuts have already resulted in about 300,000 deaths, most of them of children, and will most likely lead to significantly more by the end of the year. This is what Musk's foray into politics accomplished. If there were justice in the world, Musk would never be able to repair his reputation, at least not without devoting the bulk of his fortune to easing the misery he's engendered. Musk's sojourn in government has revealed severe flaws in his character, a blithe, dehumanizing cruelty, and a deadly incuriosity. Bill Gates has seen starving children in Africa many, many times and has devoted his life and his billions to trying to save them, which makes Bill Gates' verdict on the current richest person in the world so important and powerful. Bill Gates, the former richest person in the world, said, "The picture of the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children is not a pretty one. And the picture of the richest person in the world carrying around his drug box of ecstasy, Adderall, psychedelic mushrooms, and then taking life-saving drugs away from the poorest people in the world is a picture only Donald Trump could have created." And with Elon Musk and Donald Trump, soulless, mindless entities are what you see. We'll be right back.
We're following some very big breaking news tonight. News that will come as a big blow to Donald Trump and his agenda. Tonight, a 3-judge panel in New York has effectively balked almost all of Trump's disastrous tariffs. Trump's tariffs against Mexico and Canada, his tariffs against the EU, against China, his tariffs against uninhabited islands with nothing but penguins and snow. They are all blocked by this federal court decision. It comes out of the United States Court of International Trade, which is a specialized court you may or may not have ever heard of, but it deals specifically with trade issues. A 3-judge panel consisting of one Reagan appointee, one Obama appointee, and crucially and importantly, one Trump appointee, ruled unanimously that Trump's trade war is essentially illegal, that he does not have the authority to enact these sweeping tariffs on his own. When Trump signed the executive order enacting these tariffs, he cited something called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a law that gives the president the authority to use tariffs in times of national emergency. And in their ruling tonight, the judges write, quote, "The question is whether the International Emergency Economic Powers Act delegates these powers to the president in the form of authority to impose unlimited tariffs on goods from nearly every country in the world. The court does not read the law to confer such unbounded authority and sets aside the challenged tariffs imposed thereunder. The law does not grant tariff authority to the president simply when he finds or determines that an unusual and extraordinary threat exists." I sense a little snark there. I appreciate it. But man, when you put it that way, it all kind of makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I mean, I'm not an expert in international trade law, but Trump's justifications for these tariffs have always been pretty thin, as Chris and I were just talking about. Trump claimed his tariffs on Canada were to stop fentanyl trafficking, even though less than 1% of the fentanyl we seize at the border comes from Canada. Less than 1%. Now, for the first time, we have a federal court saying that we all kind of sort of knew to be true already. The president's justification for this trade war is BS. And that is not all. The court tonight also ordered that all of the tariffs Trump has collected so far be vacated. Just how that will work, especially from a White House that doesn't exactly abide by every court order, and what that will all mean, I do not know. This is just breaking this news in the last couple of hours, but I have the right person to ask. Starting us off tonight is Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays, who co-led this lawsuit against Donald Trump's tariffs. Attorney General Mays, thank you for joining us on such short notice. This all just happened in the last couple of hours, as you well know. let me just start, because I think we're all trying to digest this, and people at home are wondering what this exactly means. It's our understanding that this ruling applies to all tariffs except for the ones imposed on steel and aluminum. First, is that right? And can you just give us the scope of the impact of this ruling tonight?
Sure. Thanks, Jen, thanks for having me. It's a huge day for American consumers, for small businesses all throughout this country who were on the precipice of being absolutely devastated and harmed by these tariffs. And so we are celebrating this. We, like you, are still digesting it. But essentially, you're right. I mean, the Court of International Trade, in a very thoughtful decision, said that essentially all of the tariffs that Donald Trump engaged in under IEEPA, basically the April tariffs, are unlawful, and so they are enjoined. They are essentially enjoined as of tonight, as you and I are speaking. It looks like the Trump administration has made it clear they're going to try to appeal this decision, and they'll probably seek a stay, but for now, this is good news for the people of America.
No question about it. I mean, there's been understandable panic, concern about costs in so many areas of goods that people rely on. I want to get to the legal next steps in a moment, but I just want to ask, I mean, the three-judge panel also ordered that any tariff payments already collected be vacated, which sounds like it means be paid back. Is that what it means, and how exactly would that work?
Yeah, I think we're still sorting through that, so I don't want to be too declarative about that. But yes, essentially, it vacates the tariffs and it enjoins them from going forward. So that's why we're expecting Trump to try to appeal this decision. It'll probably end up at the United States Supreme Court at some point in the very near future.
So just in the last minutes, right before we came on air, the Trump administration did file a notice of appeal, which I'm sure doesn't surprise you, as you were just saying. It also it's always seemed weird that Donald Trump just had the unilateral power to wake up and decide to put tariffs on every country in the world for whatever reason he decided. I mean, as a layperson. But even with this appeal being filed and with some of their aggressive responses, he's also somebody who doesn't really have a history of complying always with court rulings. So what happens if he doesn't? I know we're just digesting this, but have you thought about that with the others who filed this lawsuit?
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And as you know, the Democratic AGs have sued Donald Trump now, I think, more than 20 times. On a couple of occasions, you're right, he has violated federal court orders. And what we have done is we have gone back into the federal court when that happens, and we have asked for what's called a motion to compel. So I suppose if they try to continue to collect these tariffs and they try to continue the tariff schemes, despite the Court of International Trade's opinion, we would have to go back in for a motion to compel. Let's hope that's not necessary, and let's see what happens next.
We will see. We'll have to keep talking about it with you and your other Democratic AGs. In a statement, they've had a pretty aggressive response to this, is one way to define it. But I think it's so important to untangle all of this, and you're the perfect expert to do that with. In a statement after the ruling, the White House said, America's trade deficits constitute a national emergency, and that's up to the president to decide, not judges. I mean, essentially, the court seemed to say the opposite. But what do you say to that?
No, that's right. And so there's a couple things here. Number one, fundamentally, the power to levy tariffs rests with Congress, right? And as you know, nowhere in IEEPA does it even mention the word tariffs. Now, the court in its decision didn't say that the president, whoever the president is, never can levy tariffs under IEEPA. But what the court is saying is the president does not have unbounded authority to levy these tariffs. And that's what this was. I mean, he just sort of woke up one day and decided that he was going to levy tariffs on Canada and China and Mexico and the worldwide tariffs, and declared that this was all based on fentanyl. Well, okay, but then came up with different reasons for it, as you just pointed out. So what are the reasons for it? And if you're going to put tariffs on tomatoes, what does that have to do with fentanyl?
It's a good question, tomatoes and fentanyl. The other way they seem to have responded, Trump advisor Stephen Miller tweeted, "The judicial coup is out of control," which seems to be kind of a predictable knee-jerk reaction to any time a court rules against them. Now, this panel, as I started off the show saying, was unanimous. One of the appointees on the panel was a Trump appointee. But what do you say to that sort of response from the White House?
You know, it's just that it's so disappointing, Jen, and it just points to a trend that we are seeing of this administration going after judges, undermining the authority of the judicial branch of government, not respecting the two other branches of government. I mean, again, that's what this case is about. This case is about the president's power vis-a-vis Congress, and now he's disrespecting judges. And he basically makes these sort of very disrespectful and alarming statements every time he loses a case. And that's just not how things are done in our country.
We've already discussed some of this. They've already filed their notice of appeal. You said it could go to the Supreme Court. What's next? I mean, what should we be watching for in the next days and weeks here?
So I think you've kind of laid out some of them, which is, do they seek a stay of this court's decision? We'll watch for that. They have the ability to do that. If this court does not allow for a stay, then we'll have to watch to make sure that the Trump administration does not, as you pointed out, violate its order. And then I would be watching for how businesses react to this. I think that a lot of small businesses, mid-sized businesses, large businesses are all going to support this and be absolutely thrilled with it and hope that it sticks, because these tariffs are causing chaos for our consumers. This is a tax. This is a direct tax, Jen, on the people of America. And I think that's why this is such a huge victory and a huge night for our country, because hopefully it's the start of us getting things back on track.
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post, and you're watching Vantage with me, Kalki Sharma. Yet simple in principle. Germany plans tax cuts to boost economic growth. Feels like research, investment and electric cars could get tax concessions. Berlin hopes this will stimulate the economy and boost investment. And Glenn Maxwell retires from one-day cricket, but the Australian batsman will continue playing the T20 format. Maxwell said the 50-over format was taking a physical toll on him. It was daring but sneaky, complicated yet simple in principle, and deadly but inexpensive. That probably sums up Ukraine's drone attack on Russia. It happened yesterday. We've seen nothing like it before. Drones flying out of parked trucks, Russian bombers engulfed in flames, and even bases in far-off Siberia damaged. How did Ukraine pull this off? What losses did Russia suffer? And how will Vladimir Putin respond? Let's break it down for you, starting with the attack. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said that it took 18 months to plan. 18 months of planning. The first step was picking the targets, and Ukraine chose to be very ambitious here. They wanted to hit Russia's bomber fleet. That's the Tu-95s and the Tu-22s. This is the bomber fleet. As the name suggests, these planes are used to drop bombs. both conventional and nuclear. And Ukraine decided to strike these Russian planes. Now look at this map. See how extensive it is, how widely spread the targets are. One is the Belaya base in Siberia. It is some 4,500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, 4,500 kilometers. Another is the Olenia base. This one is located in Russia's Arctic region, almost 2,000 kilometers from Ukraine. So these are far off targets for Kiev, and this is what they chose to strike. And that was step one, locking the targets. Step two, attacking them. Now we are talking about targets which are thousands of kilometers away, as you just saw. Ukraine does not have such long-range weapons, so they decided to use drones. Not military-grade attack drones, but simple FPV drones. FPV stands for first-person view. These are drones with a video remote control, so you can operate them from a distance. In fact, Ukraine has published some pictures. These are the drones they used against Russia. The same ones are used by social media influencers. If you go on Amazon, you could buy one of these drones. Of course, there is a difference. Kiev made them lethal. They used explosives so that the drones blew up on impact. That was step two, choosing to attack with drones. Step three, reaching the target. How do you do that? For this, Ukraine smuggled the drones into Russia. Then it smuggled special wooden boxes. Once both the drones and the boxes were inside Russia, they were put together. The drones were packed into the boxes. After that, they were loaded onto trucks. And here's something to note. None of this raised any suspicions. That's because it looked like routine activity. Hundreds of trucks probably crisscross Russia every day. So authorities completely missed the ones that were carrying Ukrainian drones. These trucks drove close to the bases that they were supposed to attack, and then it began. Ukraine used remote controls to open the boxes, and once the boxes opened, the drones simply flew out. It's hard to explain this in words. Here's an eyewitness video of what happened.
Где?
In total, Ukraine used 117 drones. Each drone had its own pilot, sitting thousands of kilometers away, guiding the weapon using a remote control. And now look at the impact, quite deadly. We have footage of the drone strikes. You can see the drone hovering over Russian bombers, then plunging into them and exploding. Take a look. Russia admitted that some of the planes caught fire, but they haven't given numbers. They also said that 3 other bases had been targeted, although those strikes were thwarted. Ukraine says it hit at least 40 Russian warplanes, 40, and 34% of Russian bombers. That is Ukraine's claim. It says their attack cost Russia up to $7 billion. If true, this is a massive setback for Moscow.
Just now, I received a report from head of the security service of Ukraine, Vasily Maluka. A brilliant operation was carried out. It took place on enemy territory and was aimed exclusively at military targets, specifically the equipment used in strikes against Ukraine. Russia suffered truly significant losses, entirely justified and deserved.
The pictures and details make one thing clear. This was an operation like no other. It wasn't about brute force. It wasn't about superior technology. It was about ingenuity. And it leaves us with 2 questions. How has it weakened Russia? And how will they hit back? Well, the intelligence failure is obvious. Kiev says the planning was happening for 18 months, yet Moscow had no clue. Plus, Ukraine had a team inside Russia, apparently right next to a Russian intelligence building. Again, that is just a claim, but if true, it's an even bigger failure. Secondly, there's a loss of prestige. Russia is a major power. It has the world's largest nuclear arsenal, yet Ukraine burnt down their bombers, that too in broad daylight. It's not a good look for Russia's air defenses. And finally, the strategic setback. These bombers have been used repeatedly against Ukraine. They're also key to Russia's nuclear second strike capability. What does that mean? Let's say the enemy hits Russia with a nuclear strike. They destroy Moscow's land-based nuclear weapons. Then what would Russia do? They would use these bombers to strike back, hence the term second strike capability. Russia always considered these bombers to be invincible. They were parked deep inside Russian territory, but Ukraine still managed to hit them. It shows a weakness in Moscow's calculations. And now the ball is in Putin's court. How will he respond to this brazen attack? Most likely with an escalation. On the ground, Putin has already made rapid gains. He captured 240 square kilometers of land in March, 379 square kilometers in April, and 507 square kilometers in the month of May. As we speak, there is a push towards Sumy, which is a city in northeast Ukraine. Zelensky says around 50,000 Russian troops have amassed nearby. So this could mean a large-scale offensive. But chances are that will not satisfy Putin. He needs a visible and impactful retaliation, one that re-establishes Russia's absolute aerial domination. It could be a series of missile strikes. It could also be the use of rarer weapons, for example, a hypersonic missile. Whatever Putin chooses, one thing is certain, Donald Trump's peace push is not working. Ukraine did not even inform the US about this strike. They may have kept Europe in the loop, because such an attack requires a lot of support. You need satellite imagery, you need the latest intelligence. It's hard to see Ukraine gather all of this without European support. So where does that leave the ceasefire talks? On life support. Teams from Russia and Ukraine did meet today. It was their second round of talks in Istanbul. They agreed to exchange wounded soldiers and those under 25 years of age. Plus both sides will exchange 6,000 bodies of killed soldiers. That's 6,000 on each side. What about a ceasefire? Ukraine says it offered an unconditional ceasefire, but Russia says it offered a partial one. That too for up to 2 or 3 days. Meanwhile, Zelensky was at a summit in Lithuania. He once again called for a ceasefire.
We must do everything to make sure diplomacy is not empty. Our delegation is now in Istanbul and we are ready to take the necessary steps for peace. Naturally, the starting point should be a ceasefire and humanitarian actions, the release of prisoners and the return of abducted children.
And just to recap, Zelensky took out 40 Russian planes on Sunday, and on Monday he expects a ceasefire. Is this delusional or strategic? There is no doubt that yesterday's operation was a huge military success for Kiev. It probably will go down in the history books, but so was last year's invasion of Kursk. Zelensky decided to occupy parts of Russia's Kursk province. The idea was to build pressure on Moscow, to force Putin to agree to a deal. But almost 1 year later, Russia has retaken all of Kursk, meaning Zelensky has lost his leverage there. So full marks for out-of-the-box thinking, also full marks for planning, but does it change the balance of power? I'm afraid it doesn't. Russia still controls 20% of Ukraine. It still holds the edge on the battlefield. It still has more weaponry than Kiev, and it also has a lot of patience. Sneak attacks alone will not change that.